Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Toolbox of Intimacy, how to create a deeply connected, intimate, and joyful marriage. I am Brittany Fentress.
And I'm Simon Fentress.
And today we have Galit Rydall and Derek Rydall. They are they're married, obviously, but a beautiful couple coming from Southern California. Welcome, you guys.
Weather FOMO.
Good to be with you guys. Really, it's an honor.
Tell us what you guys do. Like, what do you do that inspires you every day? What do you live for?
Well, I'll just briefly say, for me, I live just to have an ever deeper discovery of the truth and how to use it in service of creating more love. That's what I live for, more and more, as a result of being married to this woman here, who is just love embodied, just unconditional love. She has what I've worked 25 years to embody. She just brings it naturally. So besides being, jealous and resentful of how effortlessly it comes to her, I definitely have, I live for growing more and more in my heart and being in service to bring people back to their hearts.
So tell us about how this thing came together. How did you guys come together, and kind of where were you guys in your life?
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was living in San Francisco and doing the busy corporate thing. I had a career in architecture and interior design, but I was always immersed in women's groups and more spiritual kind of esoteric studies, and a lot of celebration and festivals, and so a very different lifestyle. And I was in different relationships, but not a long term, and I hadn't been married or had kids. So I went on a journey of real deep self-discovery to call in my beloved, and that took me to saying no to the parties of San Francisco and going deep into a journey. And I spent a New Year's at a meditation retreat in silence. And lo and behold, that's the last place I thought I would meet the love of my life. But in the silence, deep in our essence, our eyes met, and I was done.
Yeah, I looked up in line, and just all I saw was light. And I had to focus in on, it's a person, and then I could just see just the light and the love. And it was one of the most powerful experiences I'd ever had. And then I couldn't unsee it anymore after that. And it took a while after that experience, quite a while before we eventually, we connected when the silence was broken, but I was going through a separation, and there was a whole lot more going on in my life. And it was also the last thing in the world I was looking for or expecting to find. And then, so we really met in silence. We met having already really deeply connected in our hearts and our souls for no other reason but to be connected in our heart and our soul, not to get someone, not to get anything. And the result was just pow. And we have since really caught up to what was that moment. It was like that moment of pure light connection, pure soul remembrance, was packed with information and mission and purpose, and we really just catching up to what's really going on, and it took about another year or so before we actually, almost 2 years before we actually started officially dating, and this is I was saying before we started, this is an auspicious day. Today, this is so interesting. Today is the 4-year anniversary of the day we publicly proclaimed our love for each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And on a full moon, 12/12.
And on 12/12, exactly. 12/12. So there's definitely the cosmic tumbler clicking into place. God is winking at us, which, life does all the time. So yeah, today's the official day. We were literally on the phone, and I'm like, I love you. She's like, and she's like, I love you.
Saying the words in the beginning, it was,
And just gushing for literally an hour. We just kept saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. I was just drunk on the whatever, what's the love drug?
Dopamine and oxytocin. Yeah.
I was just literally bumping into furniture. I was so high on oxytocin. That was today. That was today. So,
We realized that last night, how that coincided with all this.
yeah.
I told Brittany that I loved her over breakfast, and
Breakfast
her,
activities?
yeah,
Yeah, I would. Yeah, it would have gone a little differently.
her response was this.
Could you pass the salt?
No,
there was
a thick silence.
But like you, Derek, I was when we'd met, I saw it was like a locked eyes. We were at a dance class. I literally saw his eyes and nothing else existed.
Yeah.
And
which was awkward because I asked her when they said, "Can we rotate?"
We're rotating.
Like this.
I just like in a zombie mode. Like I can't rotate. I'm stuck. But I also couldn't speak, and I was tripping over my words, and I did not understand a thing he said. He's like, "Oh, I live in Tiburon." I don't know where we even are right now. Like, where are we? It was very, very confusing. Silence probably would have been amazing for me in that moment. But like you, I was going through a separation and coming out of a divorce, or actually just starting a divorce. And it was a very, very tricky time, but it was meant. It was like I needed, like I kept wondering, like, why is he coming in now? Like, it's so hard, but it was meant to happen at that moment. It's like, no, you need him now. Because if you wait, you're going to spiral. And I had already started to spiral out of control. Mentally and like emotionally. So it was, I also had looked into that same silent retreat, that one that's New Year's. I know which one you guys are talking about.
Yeah, it was Agape with Michael Beckwith. I don't know if you know Michael Beckwith.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting. And I was a similar place. It took me a while to catch up, as I said, with that moment. She knew way more than I knew. And I had, because it was the last thing in the world that I was looking for, the last thing in the world I even thought was possible. And I just couldn't even imagine it. It took me quite a while. I mean, I remember also the moment, maybe a year and a half later, where I was like, she's really gotten under my skin. Who is this woman? Why is she doing this to me? No, I'm not supposed to be diving into such a deep experience. I really couldn't reconcile it, and then eventually I had to surrender to the magical powers of Galit and of love.
And for me, I mean, I didn't even know if anything was ever going to happen. I had to really honor what the process he was in, and dark night of the soul, and I said, let's just stay connected, and I just think you're so amazing, whatever, even if we're just friends, I just need you in my world. And I just held the space and trusted.
So you mentioned that you did some work around, calling in your partner, and that you hadn't been married before. And I'm not going to guess how old you are, but I'm guessing the subtext was that there was like this needs to be happening at this point in my life, or I'd like it to happen. So I'm curious for you, what was the thing that you figured out was getting in the way from having that in your life?
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Part of the process, I put together my master list of like everything that I wanted to manifest in detail. And then I turned that list on me. And I said, if I want to bring in someone of this caliber, am I that to him? And so I just kind of went through and was like, wow, basically, it's a list of your perfect self, if you really, if you really look at it. So I started doing all the work of the places where I needed to show up to match in a frequency to what I thought I deserved, and so that took, that was a process probably of 3 years, a really deep inner work.
Yeah, I think one of the key things
and he got everything on the list.
That was amazing.
100%.
I checked all the boxes.
Thing was off. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Wow.
What was so amazing about it, though, was when she read the list and I listened back to it about myself, and especially it was this weird thing of who created who, because there was another thing that happened where while I was still married, where it was really rough and I was doing a lot of deep work and I was doing my own vision work to come into alignment and to be the man I always wanted to be and to love all the parts of myself. You know, in my previous relationship, it was a constant argument of me trying to convince my wife to see me in certain ways. And when I realized the argument was actually an argument I could only win within myself, I began on that journey. And I began to have a recurring dream where there was this blonde woman in my dream, and the experience of it was such profound love, like I'd never felt, like fairy tale love. But it wasn't like a dream. And I would wake up heartbroken. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this?
This is before we met,
Just
but
before
I was
we met.
doing my little witchy
She
stuff.
was doing all of the calling in the one, all of that work on herself, talking to her beloved, and I was having the dreams at the exact same time.
Whoa.
And so I look back at that, and then I look at this, right? And I thought, it works, right? She's magical. And I thought, who made who here? You know, it's like a really interesting thing, you know, who created who? And it's honestly true. There's so much of the man I've always wanted to be that has emerged from me or been pulled out of me as a result of her. And my experience of her, which we'll talk about maybe a little more, when you're met with the presence, my stand has always been about truth, as I talked about in the beginning. And after a long marriage of not telling or not having the courage or being able to articulate the real needs, desires, fears, the real truth, and seeing that, oh, I can just brush that aside. We don't really have to go there until it's not just water under the bridge, but it's a tsunami that takes out the bridge in the village. That I was such a vigilant stand for that, but to the point where it was like, you know, she would call it the inner lawyer or the sword of truth. But being met by her unconditional love allowed me to finally drop so much of that armor and that protection. And so it was a perfect blend of her natural stand for unconditional love, non-judgment, and my stand for getting to the truth, that when those two things came together in the beginning of our relationship, like almost on date one, we had the realization that we were together to bring those together and create a container of truth in service of love, and that in that container, anything could be healed. And that's really been our experience, our journey.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. That is a very similar like story, not story, but like what happened with us. But I think we're flip-flopped. He was the one doing calling in. He literally had to call it. He did it as well. And I came. But the truth, like, and then when you were saying about, I think many times in marriages and couples, it's like, yeah, it's just under the water. Like, I don't really want to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it right now. We can talk about it later, and just goes under. And then it's just like, it's builds. And yeah, all of a sudden it's a tsunami.
Yes. Yeah, I think you wipe your hand off on the dish towel and you blow up and you don't even know what you're mad about anymore. It's very difficult to get down to what's it really about. It's like 3% dish towel and 97% the other 100 times you didn't really talk about what was really going on.
Yeah, I think that what you hit on was a really critical element of a close relationship, which is like a field of acceptance and non-judgment, which you can like explore your adulthood in and intimacy in, is definitely a very critical. To transition a bit, I think that there is so much more of us that is brought out when we sit with our partners and have conversations like this, a lot more that then comes out than when just like two people are talking, two experts are talking that aren't involved in each other's life. Because there's this whole dynamic of a personal life that you're bringing to the conversation of what actually is. Because I feel like people can create facades, and of course people can create facades in private lives in between themselves and their partner, but it becomes a lot harder to hide all of those things in the gaze of wholeness, of having your partner with you.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's, in my experience, I mean, there isn't anything more powerful and ultimately more healing than to have a conscious commitment to sit with each other and to share your deepest feelings, needs, desires, fears, but to share it in a way where it's not about a judgment or a trying to change the person, but just to be witnessed and held unconditionally where you are, and then to also witness and behold and hold your beloved where they are, with no attempt to change each other. That there's something about that process that allows for a recapitulation of old childhood dynamics, but without having to fight, defend, protect, change, fix, heal. You're just being held and being beheld. That there's a natural transmutation of those energies and patterns. And our experiences, it's not always easy. In fact, a lot of times it's hard to really practice the ability to hold your partner and even hold yourself. But we've always found that if we stay with it, we thread the needle, and on the other side, we have much more intimacy. You know, into me, I see, into me, you see. We have a deeper knowing, and we've just had an experience of being held or loved in a part of ourselves that we never thought we could be. And we get ourselves back. And as a result, we're more bonded and more connected. That's been our experience with this journey.
Yeah, it's knowing you're completely safe. And like when we we had a moment in July or so where I put out everything else that was like I was still holding on to and still scared. We got married, we're like, okay, and then it's like all these other things start coming out.
Yes.
And you're just saying, okay, I know you know what I'm scared of, but I really want to go farther into it. Like we're gonna go push it. We're gonna stretch. We're going to stretch it more, and we're going to really reveal what the real thing is that I'm scared about. And when I was finally able, there was like 3 things that kept coming up. And he's like, why do these keep coming up? Like, why do we keep talking about these same stories? I was like, well, obviously there's some work that I'm not done. I need to like release something. And when we're able to trust just to speak, and for me to like fully release, and whatever monster comes out, if it's me screaming, crying, letting it all go, and he says, okay, I still love you. And going farther than that, it actually is like, yeah, now that you've given me all that, would you like to go make love now? Because I want you that much more. Like giving yourself fully, being completely naked. I love for you guys to talk about the truth, the like full and naked truth, and how you guys honor each other.
Yeah, I think you talked specifically about what she was sharing about how much more the intimacy and the connection when you shared from that vulnerable, when you began to really share, because that was new for you, right?
Yeah.
Talk about, that was really new for you to share that vulnerability.
Not being married or in a long-term relationship where you could foster that safety and intimacy, or maybe the types of people I was attracting to me. So that was reserved for my girlfriends. I'd go deep, we'd go, but I hadn't had that rapport with a male partner. And so to be that vulnerable with my emotion and be like, are you still, you're not going to reject me, you're not going to walk away. And so the more I hid, the more that didn't work. And I was like, okay, so let's try it. And I said, I need to feel safe. That was number 1, emotional safety. And so a lot of our containers about making sure that both people feel safe. And then the more that I exposed the ugliness, the crying, whatever, the things you think there's no way, that actually just melted his heart more. And I'm like, no one teaches this. Like, this is not, it's the opposite of what actually, you're kind of fed by commercial love, let's say.
Commercial love.
Commercial love. Like don't start screaming and crying and letting it all out. Like that's not gonna go your way. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, like it actually, when he starts crying, it's usually what gets me going. Like, oh, we're opening up right now. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's an important thing I think for men too, obviously. You know, I was always pretty emotional, but I appeared to look like a very open guy, and I was in a lot of ways, but I was very much still protected and defended when it came to the most intimate, vulnerable places.
As most of us are.
Yeah. And I could be kind of righteous, kind of a know-it-all. Again, the lawyer, I could weave a story and make a case that you'd be like, I give up, you win. And I might have been right factually, but it wasn't in service to love. And so I was completely wrong.
And I don't know how to fight. Like I'm not a lawyer. I'm a lover. So,
She's a lover, not a fighter.
So I just be like, oh, that just hurts my heart.
Right. And then
I can't spin arguments with you. I'm like, surrender. Let's just get back to love.
And that was the difference, maybe. Right? That was true. She would just be like, I remember one time when it really clicked, where I was like doing my thing. I was like, no, you don't understand, and blah, blah, blah. And again, I was factually right. And she just goes, oh, it just hurts my heart. And I just literally just like a soldier, I just dropped the sword, fell on my knees, and I was like, I am such a jerk. And I just got it. It like pierced that armor plate, and was the beginning of me experiencing when I was met by just that love, that unconditional love. I didn't need all that stuff anymore. And that was the beginning of me having and developing really an undefended heart, and finding out that my greatest power and influence was in my vulnerability, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in vulnerability is when you're invulnerable. And that's
and you also, I imagine she didn't take power away from you in doing that. Like she's like, oh, I'm up here now because I gotcha. Like not at all.
Some people might use that against you to manipulate, you know, that's where I create the safety.
So how did you cultivate in yourself non-defensive responses to like those kind of stimuluses?
Honestly,
yes. It's tell us, how did you do that? I've worked for 25 years to figure out.
That, by the grace of God, that's just my design. I don't have it in me. I'm not programmed that way. I don't have to try. It's just my nature. I avoid confrontation. So that's the shadow of that. I'm always looking for peace. And so there's the shadow of it, which, you know, I'm worked through, but generally I always want to go to resolution, peace, even if I know he's totally wrong. I know he's still suffering. I'm like, my beloved is hurting. So let's deal with that first. And then he'll figure out that I'm actually right later.
I love this approach.
Nothing's going to happen until
She's taking notes. She's like, okay.
I am putting beloved first, and then he'll know I'm right.
Well, love is always right. Love always wins. So if that's the response, then that's like where it's going. But also in that, which combines with a lot of things that we've learned through the course of talking to these different people, which is when somebody's upset, it's really a call for like a wounding or a deeper call for intimacy, which on the surface level, and I would say the majority of people respond to it with an egoic response of, I need to defend myself in some way or show you that you are wrong in some way in order.
Anything about that.
Right.
Continue.
Which always avoids and rearmors the man in that situation to be more resistant next time and double down on why he is right.
Yes. And we've definitely had that experience.
Yeah.
There's been the moments where there was a new level of vulnerability to get to for her. And it's when she would defend, that's when she would be in the defensive place. Then that exactly what would happen to me is that I would double down. And And for her, if she could have the space, part of it's because I would be not giving her enough space. And so like she'd feel backed in a corner. But when she had her space, she would be able to come right down to the truth and the vulnerability. And that was another piece of understanding our polarities in our design, to know my sort of attachment break disorder, if you will, would be fear of abandonment, which maybe is yours too. And hers is maybe fear of engulfment or enmeshment. And so
I need the space.
She needs the space, and I need the resolution
right now.
Right. and so we learned that polarity, that she could trust that no matter what was going on, I would always be a stand for the resolution. And I could trust that if I gave her the space, she would get to that place of clarity and vulnerability and truth and come back. And that was part of the agreement as well. We're not going anywhere, but we each have different ways of getting to where we need to get to. And you know, it's like the love languages. If I try to do it, or the women are from, you know, Venus, men are from Mars thing. If I'm trying to fix her or get it to a resolution, it's not her language. It's not her design. And so we've discovered that, you know, we learned that. But I think another important piece that gets to like what we're eventually sharing with the world and with people about the truth process is, although she does come by unconditional love and non-judgment naturally, as we've gone through the journey together, we have definitely codified and broken down what is she doing that's allowing her to be that, you know? And it's kind of what you were saying too. It's, you know, she's actually, her design is give the benefit of the doubt, look for what they really need. Like you were saying, it's a cry for more love. So her natural design interprets that and is looking for, what does my beloved actually need? What's the need beneath the cry or the rage or the control?
And the way you put it, he's like, unless there's oxygen in the room, like he's not breathing, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to get my needs met. So let's put oxygen in the room first, bring love. And yeah, underneath rage is, you know, a cry for more love. So coming first with that, I just know that we're going to get to resolution. And I know that I can't meet that rage. I don't know how to operate. He's going to win. It's not a fair fight. So, yeah.
And I think the powerful thing is, some people might be listening and going, well, I'm not unconditionally loving and non-judgmental. I'm screwed. I can't do what Galit does. So, and I was the same way. I was like, oh my God, how do you do this? I've worked my whole life to get to that place. But then by breaking it down, I could actually learn from her and go, oh, that's what she's doing. Because I like to figure out how it all works, you know? And I could see, oh, she's looking for this. She's actually seeking something different than I was. She's doing these things. And when I began to practice the same exact thing, I was able to do that. Because, you know, we've discovered love's only real agenda is to meet its beloved's deepest needs, is to fulfill the seed of potential in all of creation. That's all that love wants for its beloved. And that shifts your whole framework. It's like, oh, if that's my agenda, if I'm really loving somebody actively, then I'm actually curious and listening for what is their deepest true need right now? What would truly allow them to be more them? You know, that's all that love cares. It's not, how do I have to fix them, change them, control them? It's what really wants to come out. What is their deepest need, and how can I support that? Yeah. And that's what she just did naturally until I could understand it.
That's what we codified it too, ultimately.
That's really interesting. There's this like aha moments, like, wait, you do what Galit does very, like, I'm just like blown away with the time. Yeah, I think we're like flipped, except that he has the abandonment issues and I need this space. But he can like give me, I can be having a really, like, I don't want to put my swords down. Like, no, I have all my battle up. I'm ready and I could go. And he will be, and he can get just as strong and just as loud and just as, but he knows like if I get louder and stronger, she gets louder and stronger. So, and he has the ability to walk away or step back, not every single time, but I would say most of the time, and say, okay, I love you. What do you need? Like, I love you. How can I love you more right now? And every time he does that, and it sounds very wooey, but guys, it works. Every time he says, I love you, I let it down. And he's like, what can I do for you right now? What do you need? And like asking, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And just like me actually like, well, what do I need? Oh, I need some space. Oh, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 6 hours or 8 hours. Or it's really just, it blew my mind when he started doing that. Yeah, totally.
What do you need, right?
Yeah, what do you need? And it came from a different perspective. Like, oh, he loves me. He even loves me when I'm having a tantrum, like a child. But I found interesting, and I don't know if it's the same for you guys or if you've had people, we've come across couples or people individually, is that I wasn't never a fighter. I avoided conflict until I met him. I constantly avoided conflict. I was like the pleaser and everything's got to be good and perfect. And then I met him and it was like he brought out a different side of me, like the side that needed help and clearing but now I fight for what I want. And I don't know if you guys have any, you can touch on that if that's ever happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think actually, so it's interesting. So now the way you're describing, especially because you have the need for space, whether you have the fear of engulfment, fear of abandonment, whatever, there is an evolution that occurs, and we are absolutely seeing that. It was the same thing you're describing her, so in this way you're very similar, where she was a conflict avoidant, people please, that desire where you would call it codependent or whatever, to make everybody else feel good first, and with our dynamic, whatever you want to call it, I would call it my stand, unrelenting stand to be in the truth no matter what the cost. And also unrelenting stand for her truth, for her voice, for her, like I'm here to support you in being all that you are, even if it scares the crap out of me. That's what I'm here to be a stand for, and vice versa. And so it has happened that she's become much more, not combative, but much more strong. Like I remember the first day I saw the shift, she looked at me and she said, I'm going to do this. I need to do this. And this is not about you. I was like, whoa, that's pretty hot. Okay, cool. And then she would start, and then she started to like fight back. And we coined it, she'd call my thing the inner lawyer, and I would call hers her inner Israeli, because her family's from Israel and all that. And she'd be like,
they're feisty.
She'd be suddenly very feisty. And I just thought, I was like, I find it utterly adorable when she gets angry and feisty and powerful.
That's how seriously he takes it. He's like, oh, that's so cute.
But yeah, that is evolving, where she's claiming her voice and her power more, and I'm going on the other side of being more silent and more and more, hopefully, humble and vulnerable around it, not needing to prove a point or be right. It's like a dance in our experience.
So I'm curious, what's the evolution for you guys? You said,
Well, that's very testosterone boosting. We found. I was just going through the John Gray's. We talked to him for an hour and a half, but so a lot of the things that he was saying is that actually when you do what you just described, which is just like listen and be curious with your wife, that actually boosts her estrogen and boosts your testosterone.
Wow.
Like
so her estrogen, then it sends off the pheromones that actually boost.
Right. It like that. That is the magnet. That's the magnet.
Yeah,
That's
that blew my mind. The more we talk, the more we just let everything out and we don't let them fix it. Just let it go and talk. And we feel nurtured. The more estrogen we get, meaning the more likely our body is to create a child or want to have sex, and just like, yeah. And
feel
then
connected.
Then he becomes the hero because he's listening, and then he boosts his testosterone. It was fascinating.
It is a cocktail.
That's awesome. That actually describes the biochemical and neurological happening under this process. That sounds like you're doing a similar thing that we've developed about this truth container process.
It's a love juice right there.
It's about creating love juice. It's just our cauldron where we're just creating of love juice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'd like to hear more about your guys' truth and what you've been creating. Is there any more to that we didn't touch on so far about, now I can't get cocktail out of my head, the truth cocktail.
We'll work on that later.
Check on the domain, truthcocktail.com. I think we should talk about a little bit, maybe there's this thing, like we talk about like the 2 key elements of a relationship and all that. Freedom and commitment has been a really big piece, and it speaks to the different attachment styles, fear of abandonment, fear of engulfment. So the fear of engulfment person tends to need more space, more freedom, tends to be more needing of their owning of their sovereignty, and the person of the other one needs to grow into their commitment. Or another word we have for it is sovereign unity. And it's that our experience, and I'll let you talk about your journey of this, about she brought a strong polarity of freedom, and I brought a strong experience of commitment. And our discovery was that you can't really be your full, free, unleashed self without being committed to someone else or something else more deeply. And that you also can't truly be committed to someone if it isn't about them ultimately being unleashed into their full freedom. That those two are the masculine and the feminine. It's the polarity, the dance. And that what we're together through the container or the commitment that is required to allow for each individual to discover and find their full sovereign expression and freedom. And so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about
how that occurred for me, I think after, not being in a commitment, and I was free, but I was way more protected. And then once I knew that he's not going anywhere, we're, diving into commitment, then I reached a level of freedom that I hadn't experienced before, where I can be my full self, but also grounded by the commitment. So it's a whole other level of freedom, where even in my heart or expressing love, at large, that wouldn't be misinterpreted. They knew it's like a more pure, innocent love that otherwise I couldn't express because other men might misinterpret it or something like that. So it happened on many levels, and it's shocking. I would never think that I would feel more free in a commitment than single, but it actually is true.
Well, I think there's always this in dating life. There's always this hedging, like you're hedging. You're like, are they going to accept me? Like, because it's not really super clear that you're going to be together forever, or that it's going to evolve to that. Or even if there's the potential, there's really this, are we in, are we out, or we're maybe going towards that. And I think for people that have dated for longer periods of their life, this armoring starts happening, right? Like, I'm going to get rejected, so I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to, it could hurt in the future. So maybe I'm just going to have the deeper, commitments or deeper commitments and conversations with my girlfriends. Cause I know if this guy leaves, then I got them. Right.
You got it. So you did the dating life for a while. I can sense it.
No, I was just making it up. It was good.
The big piece for me was, for both of us, but mainly for me, is like, I'm not going anywhere. Once that was established, then we can do the deep work. Without that, I'm not going to go in the deep vulnerability. Like that commitment, it's like we could be having the worst fight, but if we add, and I'm not going anywhere, that was the key word tool for me to just sink into my vulnerability. Otherwise, all my armor was going to be like, yeah, I'm out of here,
And it's it's also, there's other things in your life indicating like you're really married. You're like the container has been set, the life is together. Like there's this huge indicator in your life that that's what's going on beyond just what's being said. It's the actions, it's the commitments,
actual
the
structure.
devotion.
And I'm not going anywhere was more in the dating phase before we got married.
Oh.
In order to develop together.
Or engaged and all that. And her mother threw us a big Jewish wedding. So, and I'm now a made man, and I've got the whole Jewish mob that will not let me go anywhere.
So, he can't go
so
anywhere.
There's that too. You know?
There is that too. Did you guys find that did you have a change? Because a lot of people are like, oh, we're not going to get married. We're just going to stay together as I forgot there's a term for it, but they'll just stay together.
Domestic partners.
Domestic partner.
Fear of commitment.
But yeah, fear of commitment. But when you guys actually got married, how long, because it happens for everybody, how long did it take for a full shift, another shift of deepening?
We've gotten married twice so far. So we got married in a festival, at the end of a festival called Eden. And we were the first couple to ever be married there. So we are officially the first couple of Eden. And we got married there with our best friends. They married us.
So there was just four of us. It's
just
like
four of us.
A witness, and then he was the
Officiant.
But it was legal and all that. But we got married because we wanted to do it for a variety of reasons. And then we got married again when her mother threw us this big Jewish wedding that was supposed to just be a little brunch. But
yeah, that went to 0 to 60 fast, didn't it?
But yeah, you talk about how the shit. For me, I knew what being married was like. I never thought I would do it again, but I knew that I'd found my person. Like I was done, at the beginning. But I'm curious what your experience was.
It definitely, having not been married before, just even if it was small and it was like more on paper, but I don't know, I'm kind of girly that way. There's this dream to have the wedding and to wear the dress, or it's more than that. It's about being witnessed by your community. So I think that's really it. So we still want to have another wedding.
We're still going to have another wedding.
That was back east, with a different community. And I think this whole being witnessed by our community in our love is, I don't know, it does shift. There's something deep that happened.
And that happened with the Jewish wedding, I think. I think that was...
But that was a community that I grew up with. And now with our current community of friends, I still want to do that anymore.
Yeah, we're doing it. Now it's on camera. Now I can't back up.
Call it a recommitment. I love the idea. We were talking with someone else about recommitting to each other every year.
Yeah, we are kind of on that track. Like we're going to have a recommitment ceremony every year. And I think that's powerful because, you're not even the same. You don't even wake up with the same person every day, let alone the same person every year. But that's also part of why our journey of this truth-telling process of, the first 2 years of our relationship, we talked for at least 3 hours every single day, 7 days a week.
And it was long distance.
And it was back and forth long distance. And now that kind of laid the foundation. It was an accelerated workshop, so this process of always sort of searching, where are we really, what is our needs, desires, fears, what's really up, and addressing it, every day as it comes up, not letting anything go under the rug, keeps us present, keeps us clean, keeps us clear. And so you don't wake up one day and go, who are you? Or who am I? Yeah. So we're constantly discovering, oh my God, you're a little new today. Oh, I'm a little new. Wow. And then you don't take each other for granted. You don't fall into the familiar disease. And, but nevertheless, that deep commitment every year, I think is a powerful practice. We even have little, like today, it's a celebration today because it's the anniversary of us publicly declaring our love, you know.
We're just really into our love.
We're just
Celebrate it all
we're
the
just
time.
into it. We're just into it. We're just into us. That's the key element.
That's kind of, I think we just met our other match. Like, we're just kind of into what people ask, what do you guys do? We just kind of hang out together. Like,
We just have
that's
like
all
this,
we do.
you can just have a set, you know, with some purple like cushions and stuff, or just like live cast 24/7. Just
That's right.
love
Right.
casting.
That's all we do is hang out. And I think it's beautiful when you can be honest with people. It's like, yeah, we're into us. And there's something really, for me, that's all I ever wanted.
Yeah, I mean, you have this whole kind of pot. So I came from more like the whatever festival, new agey kind of like groups of people, and she was a straight lady. She used to work.
I mean, I was an Arabic translator, and I used to speak Hebrew quite fluently as well, for the government. So I came from full like straight lined Republican family, and then I slowly started shifting, traumatic divorce, breakup, and then I also at that time was into interior design, and I was just doing that. And during the breakup, a full transformation happened where his question when I met him,
be careful who you take home.
Be careful who you take. Be careful who you take home. Be careful who you go home with. One of the first questions he asked me was, when was the last time you talked to God? Like straight up. And like, oh God, that's okay. We're going there. But then it opened this door that I had shut a while ago. I grew up super conservative and evangelical, and I had shut that door for quite some time. And but when he brought that back in, and then everything, that was probably the biggest shift. And then you had this moment where you saw the light. Now, as I'm saying this, I remember, this is getting real for some people, but my friends know. But we're having sex outside in the lawn. I had this intuition. I'm like, we have to go outside. We can go have sex outside because
on the water, on the bay.
On the water, and it's because I have this feeling I need to do that right now. And this is like me letting myself be in touch with me, which was new. And we go and we're having sex in the grass, and I see just light, like as we're having this, and I felt this moment of like God coming into my body and full recognition of this being that I was with, and saying out loud, like, oh my God, I found you. Like, I found you. Like, we're back. Like, and it was a powerful moment. I just I can't believe I forgot that. And like, this is a powerful moment. And then my family, and I think that was like 2 weeks of being with you, maybe. And I was still.
It was more towards 3.5.
3.5 weeks.
Exactly. It was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3.5.
But then, I am still full throttle in separation mode, and my family, I'm like, I found the person of my life. And that was the hardest gulp. And then also when you find that person, letting go of what everybody else thinks, that was a big challenge. That was the next step, fully trusting yourself and the God or universe or whoever your north is. When there's that call of like, hey, this is your person, like stepping up to that, like you guys stepped up to it in a way, like you saw that light, and there's like you said, there's no going back. That was it.
And it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I mean, you're describing a very similar experience that we had, and I mean, so many, in several sense, full Kundalini awakenings, full cosmic openings, and just an undeniable experience of a love that's bigger than both of us, and unlike, like there really is such a thing as fairy tale love, but it's not a fairy tale. It's just real love when two individuals, whether you call it twin flames or whatever you want to call it, there's something very real about it.
What did you call it? Solar?
I said soul, what do you
no,
call it? Twin flames, or what were you
I
saying?
said a soul agreement.
Oh, soul agreement.
Yeah.
And you just know it's got
What'd you think?
yeah, solar agreement. Just got a different feeling, and it's like it doesn't take a lot of time. Like you said, it's like crack. You know, you're opened up to it. And for me, I definitely was in denial for a while, but for a similar reason. I came from being married for a long time. I was the suburban dad in khakis and a polo shirt, and suddenly here
I talked about festivals. He's like, "What are you talking about?"
like,
I know.
who is this hippie? Who is this hippie? And it was like everything. I used to say that I didn't know I was living in black and white until she came into my life. And kind of like that movie, Somethingville, where everything's in black.
Oh yeah, everything's black and white. She has an orgasm, and then everything's in color.
Trees on fire, and everything is burning, and the burning bush, and the color, and that was my experience. And like, in the most ironic part about it was everything I'd been praying for, everything I'd been desiring, to be more alive, to be more unleashed, to be more myself, to really be in love. My idea of how to get there was, that was my vision board, but none of this was on my vision board. But it was everything that I had been deeply praying or desiring, like really deep down, but couldn't even have imagined what it could look like.
Same for you. You had no idea.
Yeah. Yep.
So now my vision board just going to have a big empty space in the middle. That's
space for grace.
Right, exactly. Space of grace. Like, this is all my ideas, and God is going, that's really cute, son. Really cute.
Yeah, it's like, this is a space for shit I didn't even know was so dope. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, that's beautiful. It's really beautiful to describe. We love talking to couples, by the way. It's one of our favorite sports, because you really hear the same stories, and you really get confirmation. And even when there's challenges and crises, you realize, oh, it's not personal. It's just a pattern. It's a script we all take on at various points. And then you get a little relief from that. So it's just really such a treat to talk to you guys.
Yeah, that's like there was a big reason why we wanted to do this show, is when we got married and we're looking around and we're like, okay, who do we want to surround ourselves with? Like, who do we want to aspire to be as a married couple? Is like, for the world, how are we going to create a bigger impact on our kids? And who holds the integrity that we also have and can keep us accountable? That was the other thing. Keep us accountable to what we've promised to each other and to our values and our commitment and our vision. And
who can reinforce this and be like, oh yeah, it's like, that's amazing. And
or who we can go to when we're having a hard time, like, hey, we're having a difficult time right now. Like you said, when you bounce it off, like, oh, we've had that. That's this. Yeah. It takes the personal part out of it. You're like, oh, okay.
I think there's also a really big shift when you go from, the dating life or kind of the singles life, and people have investments in you sort of being a bit broken and unwhole, and like, the disappointments and the ups and downs and dramas of dating. And now you're like, I found this person and it's amazing and I'm letting this go. And like, those people aren't necessarily the people that are being validated that they're meaningful in the same way in your life. And it's hard for people to go through that transition. And
totally.
That's a good point.
Really good.
It's in some people, I think, can make that transition, but they're really good inside themselves, and they're just really like, I celebrate you, really elevating yourself and having an amazing life, and whatever that looks like, I'm here for you. But I don't think that's the most often the kind of friendships.
In the 3 containers that we do the work, the 3 containers of truth thing. The first one is getting in touch with your truth in your sovereign individual container, and then sharing that and getting in touch with the truth in the couple container, the larger container, whereas my truth and your truth merge, and there's a truth in the middle that serves the highest truth of both. And that doesn't always mean it's comfortable. I will get to it. Like, that's true. We can't deny it. And I'm scared. That scares me. And then the third container is in community. And that's where, whether you call it the family or a group of couples or community, is now you bring that to bear on that. And through all three of those containers, the commitment is that we are here to get to the deepest truth, and that allows for the greatest expression and fulfillment of the individual and of the couple and of the community, but never at the expense of either. And so that's a journey that, like you said, you might bump up against. Oh my God, if you really change and become your best, I'm afraid you won't be my friend anymore. I'm afraid you won't have time for me. You'll make me feel bad because I'm not growing the way you're growing, or you know, all those things come into play. And then you want to protect what you've got and hold a person down, crabs in a bucket, you know. But with this journey, it's like, no, we're a stand for the highest.
We want to up-level
everybody, you know. And that will mean sometimes the allowing of you guys to up-level is going to make it realize that we got to up-level and face some painful stuff. But that's how you grow, you know. It's like there's this one little joke I love to talk about. This woman's doing all this work in her relationship and the husband's not doing it. And he keeps going, oh, you know, she's poo-pooing it. She's like, no, come on, please, you know, join me out. And he's like, poo-poo. And then one day he looks at, he's like, what? So if I don't do this work, you know, and grow like you, you're not going to love me? She goes, of course not, honey. I'll always love you. I'll miss you, but I'll love you.
There was this moment, yeah, when we, another reason why, like, we wanted to do this work and to help people up level was we went to Bali and for our honeymoon, and you just see all these women on the retreats, just retreats for women, like, to like find yourself and get, you know, in touch with your feminine power and your masculine power, but with, you know, just with a group of women, which is great if you haven't done your work or haven't. That's kind of a cliche thing to say, but if you need to dig in and take care of yourself, do that. But if you're also in a committed relationship, do it together. Like providing that and we're finding it doesn't really exist. There's very little that out there for couples, but to do it together, up level together, like go and commit and go to Bali to a retreat, but do it together. Like, don't, because my thing is, and he's had it happen. We've had girlfriends go find themselves and up level, and then they come back and like, yeah, I'm out. Bye. So it
wasn't the right person.
It wasn't the right person. Yeah.
Thank God. I would have.
They just excuse themselves for my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll be going now.
I'm gonna create some space so you can get something better. Okay, bye.
You're so generous. You're such a servant.
I love that way of looking at it. Knowing that you need something better.
That is also, again, the trick and the challenge that we found with doing this work truly and taking it all the way through is, again, you're not in a relationship. There's no guarantee. The guarantee and the commitment that I'm not going anywhere is nothing happens until we get to the truth. And if it's the truth, it's the truth. And that truth will always lead to the next best version of ourselves, individually and collectively. But the journey of that and taking it all the way through, you know, like we've been talking about, brings you up against all the places you don't want to acknowledge, all the places you're afraid of letting go of control, all the, you know, now I'm sure if I really support you here, I'm screwed and you're gone, or I'm gone, or all, you have to keep crossing those thresholds. And you realize that you're not really in relationship to get anything. You're not in relationship. So now I've got the thing that makes me feel good and safe. Now I'm not going to let it go. Because that's like you just take the bird by the wings and just crush it slowly, and it's not going to fly anymore, which is, by the way, in full transparency, what I did in the beginning of our relationship. You know, all the things that made me fall in love and that made me feel unleashed and freer again became the very things that were in my face that scared me. But because of the process we took it through of getting down to the truth and sharing it vulnerably and being held and witnessed in it, you know, we were both able to move through those things that literally threatened to destroy us over and over again. I mean, we were annihilated several times. You know, we went through 10 years of relationship in 2 years because we were doing that kind of work. And we were just, there was days we were just, we were annihilated. And then we just crawled back to that container, so to speak, picked up those questions in that process, and we're like, okay. I remember literally one time I'm lying in the bed and I'm done. I am toast. And she just slides on the bed with these questions that we work with. And she just goes, what are you feeling? What do you want? What do you need? She just started doing it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I did it anyways. And like little bit by little bit, resurrected again, back into our hearts, back into the container, and to another level. So what that shows us is there's really nothing you can't address and deal with, and take it all the way through.
Nothing that a relationship, the intention of transformational or conscious partnership is evolution and healing.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up to. That's our commitment is to God first, then ourselves, and then to the relationship.
And then to the world, you know, so it's like that kind of, that evolution. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really that your life as that prayer and communion with God, and lighting up the inside of your relationship, and like that being the core of it. And when you have lots of people that are just struggling to find any kind of commitment or whatever in their life, they're just really struggling for that, you know, to try to make that key piece of their life work.
Yes.
And then it's consuming all this energy, as opposed to contrast that with a container where you feel the wholeness and fullness of God's grace and love inside of your life every day, with your partner. And it's like, you really want to give. And Brittany doesn't, like, before we started this, she does not like to be on camera. That's just like, she really, really has a hard time ever being on camera. But when our purpose became bigger
than me,
then suddenly I'm looking at, you know, just through this these last interviews, almost 24 hours where we're on camera engaged. And I'm guessing you didn't know that was like a huge fear, concern thing that happened. But if you want to.
Oh, I had full breakdowns in tears. Like, like, I don't want to deal with this. Something would slightly change and I had like completely freaked. But the moment it became bigger than me, why am I doing this? Like, what's important for me? What's the give? It just took all it off of me. It's like, who cares what you look like? Who cares if you're breaking out, or your hair is a mess today, or just whatever is happening? Or it's just like, you're showing up and you're trying to give to something bigger than you. Yeah. And every time we do that with us, it's like, okay, there's some days where I don't want God in. Like, not letting you in today. Like, I want to hold my ground. Like, I am stubborn. And it always takes... Yeah, I think I know my own path. I'm good. Yeah. And it always takes, you know, something. He'll tell me something, but then I hear it from someone else. I'm like, oh, they said this. And he's the exact same thing he just told me. I was like, yeah.
She's like, look what I just learned. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we need translators, you know.
You're describing my exact journey too. When I had to finally admit, oh, you're saying the same thing my former wife said, and my kids say, and my dog has been saying, and is like, oh, oops, I get it now, you know? And in this process or in this kind of relationship, you can actually finally be safe to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
I found it, whereas before it used to be what terrified me. Now, you know, there might be a little bit of guilt or shame in there. It's almost predominantly, what a relief. What a relief I don't have to hold up a pretense. What a relief I don't have to be right. Like, it's so much more liberating to just be transparent and be myself.
Or just admit you don't know. I don't know. Like, so just admit that I am wrong. I may not know the question, like the answer to that. Like,
I will touch on that thing that you just said, which is, so I went to the medicine path, and they have like a San Pedro ceremonies, and I did this big prayer for my queen, and like it just held this amazing space, and it's just like, oh, it was just amazing people. And so they were one of the people that we interviewed, George and Georgia Bertelstein. And one of the things they said was, you're the one I want to listen to about whatever. And it's like that thing where these other people could not get through, and you didn't really want to hear, even if they had some title or whatever. There's this love that transcends all that, where you can listen to your beloved about these things. It's like, you're the one that I want to listen to.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I love that. I can feel it in your energy too. I actually got the download and gave her the moniker of Medicine Heart, because she is that space, you know, that I mean, you're just describing. I mean, that's isn't that what everybody's ultimately hungering for? Is to feel so safe and so seen and so held and so beheld that they can finally drop all of the protection and just let the love get into all those parts that they've been protecting themselves from the hurt, but they've also been blocking the love from getting into those places that are hurt. Exactly. You know, our mission is just to love everybody back to themselves. And that's what I hear you when you say that. That's what I hear, by being able to be listened to and being that safe place. It's really beautiful.
I have to say, like, just picturing you in ceremony, calling in your queen, like, makes me want to cry. So beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of the first stories he told me. I called you in. I did the ceremony. And then I was like, well, technically I've been asking for you as well. Like, going back into my prayers, they weren't prayers, they were me like yelling at God. Like, where is this man? Like, I knew, even this is back when I was still married, but I was miserable and I just angry. Like, well, when is he showing up? Thinking it was my ex-husband. Like, when's he going to become the man I thought he would? Like, this person that I thought I was getting and I knew was going to get, like, and then when that fell apart, I was like, where is he? And just get really angry, knowing that there was this love. I chasing a love that I knew existed. Like, trying to figure out where it's at. It's just like, that's a prayer in itself. That's like,
totally.
Prayer is when your heart, whether it's passionate or soft, if your heart's in there, that's a prayer.
And that was a great strategy. You put a fire under God's butt, and God is like, going, come on, do the work. Like,
what you got, God? What you got? I dare you. I dare you. In the ceremony, it was the first time, and I think this is the real necessity of leaders and couples that are leaders that are really making a stand for each other, is that was the first time that I heard a couple really throw down the gratitude. But like, when you were talking about getting married back east, in front of a group of people, it's like, I'm so thankful for my wife. I don't want to live a day without her. I don't know what I would do without her. She's this amazing being in my life every day. God, thank you so much for this person in my life. And that not only person being able to say that, but also a person being able to say it, mean it in front of other people.
And not be a facade.
And then
Actually,
hear their partner say the same thing. That was like, oh, that can happen. It can be like that. Like, whoa.
Yes. They gave you that sort of inflection point, that mirror of what's possible. Like,
Right.
I felt it. I can feel it while you're talking. I just literally just make me like hug her. The frequency of love and gratitude is like really rich in your field right now. It's really beautiful.
So I had one more question. Well, I guess technically two more questions. We're over on time. We're having way too much fun. When there's question to go farther into what we were speaking on earlier, when you fully unleash and open and let that love in and go into all those places you hadn't let it before. In your experience, because that's what happened for me, did you feel yourself become more powerful and more like have more power? Like, oh, when I unleash all this, I get all these other gifts.
I'll let you speak for you, but for me, uneffing deniably. Like, I thought that my power came from my ability to control, or my ability to know, or my ability to protect myself mostly. And when I discovered all of those places in me that I didn't think were lovable or worthy or valuable or safe, all the energy it was taking to protect them was all the energy I didn't have to project and to be the powerful man that I am. And when I began to let those places, those walls down and that armor down, and let those parts of me be loved and met, I could let go of all of that investment I was putting my currency into every day. I got all that back. The level of creativity, inspiration, definitely, it was a sense of power, but it was a different kind of power. It wasn't the power, it was power versus force. It was real power. It was a power that I didn't have to do. It was moving through me. And then I found that my influence, as I was saying earlier, which was a different kind of power. I didn't have to say anything. Just my presence suddenly had more influence.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that, so yes, absolutely, 100%. But the other thing that was so important for me was, as I did this work and we did this journey with the truth process and all that, and I let the love in, again, as I said, the very thing I thought I had to protect to be safe and to be powerful or confident, when I let that down, all of that parts of me that got met with love, that was really the first time in my life I ever had a deep somatic experience of being unconditionally loved. I didn't even know what unconditional love really looked and felt like until then. And when that changed the whole game, you know? So that's, it's like, whoa, like this has been I'm getting chills now, even as I remember it, you know, just, wow, it's actually possible. And I used to joke, I was like, will you still love me if I'm fat, bald, and wearing a diaper like a Cabbage Patch? And like, just test the line, right? But it was like, the answer is yes. I'll miss you, but I'll love you.
I love that, Bryce. I'll miss you. I'll miss that part of you, but I love you.
All right. Do you have a response as well?
Okay.
Letting those parts in.
Yeah, I think ultimately we all want to be, you know, seen. For me, that's really was my quest. I wanted to be seen in all my multidimensionality, and to, you know, in the eyes of my beloved, I can be any piece. You know, I can be like a little girl, I can be my wise woman, I can be a brat, whatever it is, and to be loved in all those pieces. There was an integration of self that, of course, I was doing all the work to give that to myself, but something else happens when you're held by the beloved, and it's still working through me every day. And I find that the deeper our love goes, the more power that I feel. And again, it's a different quality of power. It's not a power over. It's just an empowered place to emit my greatest gifts and take up more space in the world.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's-
I love playing with my wife's brat as well.
Brat.
yes.
Oh. We used to name them. Like, when are we going? Where are we going?
Oh yeah.
We used to name them, but we have to go.
Name the sub personalities.
Oh yeah.
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 So I'd hear her saying, so I have this feeling, and I was like, oh, ooh, who is that? Who is that personality? Now let's put, like, what's their name? What's their name? Can we name them?
Yeah.
I've been, we call them like little bitmojis. They all have their own little
Character.
Yeah.
The good girl, the bad girl, the brat, the inner Israeli, the inner lawyer.
There's new ones coming out every day now.
Mhm.
I think it's also, you didn't realize you had a whole society populating you.
Oh yeah.
I think it's also, though, you get a chance to explore all the facets of the masculine and all the facets of the feminine. There's the warrior and the killer and the protector and the lover and the boy and for the woman, there's, again, similar, there's the maiden, the mother, the crone, the prostitute, the bad girl, the good girl, the high priestess, the fierce warrior, the Wonder Woman, whatever.
So now we have date nights with each
With
of
different
you
characters.
can choose your character.
Do you really? I was gonna ask you. Do you guys have rituals or things that you do regularly to stay?
I was wondering
connected?
when they were gonna drop in the Wonder Woman thing, because the Galit yeah, Israeli. I was like, I was like, when's it gonna come in?
Connection, actually.
Yeah, and her name is Gal Gadot, which is Gal is the masculine form. Her name is Galit, which is that's masculine wave, and Galit is the feminine wave.
Oh.
I encourage you to set up date nights with all the different characters and mix and match and see what happens.
Do you say, I'm gonna bring out this person, or do you request, can I please have the warrior?
It's both.
It's both. Okay.
Sometimes it's a surprise.
Sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes you don't know who's coming out. Sometimes it changes just on the whim, sometimes
It just changes in midstream.
Yeah, and we're just suddenly playing with little kids playing hopscotch, and the next moment, we're riding a pony. I don't know. It's just it's a playful exploration
of all of our parts.
Yeah. And then it might be, let's pull a tarot card or a deck, and we're to drop into a serious space, and she'll put on some high priestess stuff, and I'll put on some more ceremonial stuff, and then it's in, because of the container, there's so much safety, and there's the intention is so much about deepening the love and the aliveness and the playfulness and the celebration, that you can just pretty much, we can go anywhere.
But there is I love ritual, and I think that I love creating space and sacred space. That's a part of our truth container, is setting up the space. Brings me into a more intentional place. And even if it's playful, bringing in costume or jewels, is something I brought to him that was totally foreign.
Yeah.
But I think the power of ritual can really elevate and transform what would just be like, hey, you want to watch Netflix and then we'll talk about our relationship. Like, it's just very different.
It is.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That happens.
That was one of the things when we first exchanged social media, and she was checking me out, that I had pictures of my altar with Isis and Kuan Yin with these owl wings, and
It was
she
intense.
was like, whoa.
It was very
Whoa,
intense.
dude.
But then once he explained, once I was in the room and I saw this, because it's like 7 feet long, and it was
You guys
huge.
gotta swap altar pictures.
But what's hilarious now is that he jokes, he's like, I think we flip-flopped, because because also having interior design background, and my mom was interior designer, the space is so sacred to me, and everything I put in the space is with intention. So now I have altars all over the house. I have intention.
We have a full
there's altars almost every room.
15 by 15 room that's the crystal.
It's the crystal room.
Wow.
I have a crystal room.
All right.
Yeah. So now I do crystal healing with people, and we call it the crystal room. And I have fully transformed to the other side of this little girl side who wanted to play with the rocks and wanted to have fun with rainbows and the moon, and fully let that out.
Full woo now.
Oh yeah, I've gone foo woo woo now. Like some of my friends have been like, "What? What happened? Like, where are you?" Like, I'm still here, but
Yes.
having way more fun.
Yeah. So we got married, and okay, bring out the snake dancers. Huh? What's going on? What's going on?
But there's a bigger theme here, which is like your body is your temple, your home is your temple. So living life in a sacred way, everything becomes sacred, right? So
It does.
we surround ourselves with objects of beauty and meaning. You know, life's hard enough, so like there's ways that we can just elevate the frequency and help ourselves, you know.
Well, I can see there's definitely a need for some side conversations, some sharing of images and pictures.
I know.
We can just set up a cosplay next time. Zoom meeting.
But before we completely digress, you guys have a
watching. You still getting some value out of this? I hope so. It's fun.
yeah. This is what edit's for. We have.
If you made it this far, you deserve it.
You deserve the free gift.
Deserve it.
Because we're going to talk about the free gift that you guys deserve for letting us play on camera. And Derek and Galit have a beautiful offer to. They have a beautiful offer to offer you, and it's going to be right below this video. So if you see this video, just check it out below. And Derek, do you mind going into what you guys created for them?
Yeah, I can say a little bit about it. It's called the 3 Containers of Truth, and we've been basically talking about it throughout. And it's a process that we developed as we've sort of been sharing, you know, my experience of her experience of me, and when it worked and how it worked organically at first. And as we began to codify what's really going on here, how is that operating, we developed this process where we create the container and we have a series of questions that you ask yourself first. You have your own work in your own sovereign container where you're asking questions like, what am I feeling? What do I want? What do I need? Because there's a need embedded in our want stories. And then what if there were no limits, which allows us to drop more deeply into freed from all the shoulds and shouldn'ts and haves and can'ts and all that. And then ultimately, what would love grant you? So there's this first initial tool that came up in the container that allowed us, whenever we'd get lost in our head or wherever, or in a conversation or an argument, it would bring us back to what's really living in our body, what's really living in our hearts. And then from there, it became undeniable. And that was one piece. And then, and I won't go into all the details, but another piece was we realized there was a lot that was not being spoken. There was ways we were speaking that weren't being heard. There were things we knew we needed to do, but we weren't doing, and things we were doing that we knew we needed to stop. But we couldn't get clear until we actually, again, created a series of questions and prompts that allowed us to begin to practice asking, what is being said that I'm not hearing within myself, within this relationship? What am I saying that isn't being heard within myself in this relationship? And then why isn't it being heard? Oh, because I'm not saying it in a way to even be heard. I'm actually not, it's passive aggressive, it's reactive, it's sarcastic. And just step by step, we built a process that when we do it alone and then together, it always brings us back to what's really living, what's really true, what's really needed. And then a step-by-step process to meet that need. And the transformational journey that we were talking about threading the eye of the needle of, and it's also the way it's designed is it's not a conversation. It's a witnessing of your partner in their container, full, unfiltered, sharing and going through these questions. And it allows them to experience being fully expressed
and witnessed.
And witnessed.
That's healing in itself.
With the partner. And then the partner observing experiences where that may trigger them, And then they get a chance to be fully expressed and uninterrupted and witnessed. And as it goes through the iterations, there's an evolution that occurs. So that's the basic nutshell, but it's a very transformational, evolutionary process that we've found allows us to move through any issue and allows us to build these subjective habits of where now it's become more informal, but we just do it on a regular basis, right? And then sometimes if it's a big deal, we'll set the container. And it's also, tell them about how it's also not just about processing challenging stuff. There's a whole another side to it that she brought in, because I'll be the one that wants to process and go deep. She brings in
and it really saved us when we were going through the really hard stuff, like when you just like, I don't even know what I need. You know, you can't just having a framework when you're just out of your mind in an highly charged emotional state. But other times I like in a more ritualistic kind of date night, it can be playful, and it's about like bringing in our, you know, the needs in terms of joy, in terms of creativity, in terms of visioning our greatest life. So it doesn't have to be used just for the, you know, heavy stuff. It can be used to, it's really about getting in touch with our needs and desires, and that keeps changing as we grow and evolve. So it keeps us up to date in present time. It keeps the making the invisible visible for ourselves in the relationship, and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to note as the deep processing part of it definitely has saved our lives and saved our marriage, but the playful processing part of it, the part where we get to explore
nurturing
our deepest fantasies, our deepest desires, our deepest dreams and needs, and all those places we dared not even acknowledge to ourselves, let alone to our beloved, has been what has allowed our relationship to take quantum leaps in terms of abundance and joy and celebration and adventure, and that really makes us come alive. And she brought that, because I would just be processing. She finally go, can we just get into our bodies and have some fun here and figure out what makes us alive? And I'd be like, all right, you know, and again, the combination of the two is really an important piece. And so that's all built into the truth container process that we're, it's like a 5-module deep dive training that we're just giving away for free. We're just, we've watched it save couples' marriages and save their relationships. And we just want everybody to have it.
Thank you. I'm going to download it for us.
I like that imagery of kind of like taking the elevator from the head to the heart. You're like, oh, that's fine. We can flip out up here for a while. Well, let's kind of like take it. Let's come down here for a little bit. See how this is. Now let's move a little farther. Move a little farther down. Oh, I got your attention now, huh?
Oh, now you got my attention.
Wisdom, right? There.
Yep.
Well, it's like, that's really interesting, honey. Can we just get into the elevator and take it a floor down?
Keep going. Next floor.
I got something really good for you in the basement. All right. It's a surprise.
Second level cosmetics, lingerie.
Well, I'm gonna stop us there. Thank you, everybody, for coming and for watching us. I said coming again. I did that with Celine and Kevin.
No, she just like, you didn't want to.
Walked right into it.
I wasn't going to do that.
I walked right into it.
I wasn't going to do that.